I'm going to call the meeting to order. We will start with a roll call. We had Jack Scarborough, Bonnie Sears, Bridget Powers, myself, Rebecca Hanson, Bill Bolton, Chris Buckley, and Marianne Barnsley, and also joining us is Brian Murphy. Next, we will review the minutes from the public hearing on October 18th. Who has corrections, comments on the minutes from our last meeting?
I only had one, and I'm not sure if it's just that I understood when, at the end of it for the public comments, Tanya, has Tanya Chance here, and I thought her name was LaChance. I could be wrong. I thought I heard her say LaChance, but anyway, that's the only thing I saw.
It does say in the attendees, it says Tanya Chance. I'm assuming she signed in. I don't know.
I don't know, but anyway, that's just, I just thought I'd mention it just in case.
I have two things. In the board comment section on page 3, the last bullet, it said the board thanked Market Basket for coming to Plymouth. Did that happen? Did we all thank?
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, and I don't even think that sounds very good. I think that sounds like...
Well,
I mean, if we
I
said
recall
needs to
that
be
it
there.
was stated.
It was.
But was it stated from, on behalf of the board, or was it stated by a person on
I
the board?
think it was stated in general,
By
John
Mr. Raylant.
Ranlett.
Okay.
So maybe John Ranlett, thank.
And then I said, oh, yeah, really, you know, I kind of
Okay.
agreed with him, and that's,
But it definitely was stated.
yeah.
I know it was stated. I guess I'm just wondering if we think the board thinks,
The board said that.
That sounds like an official statement from the board.
Yeah.
which
Right, it was only two
Sounds a little
people.
inappropriate.
can we edit it to say several board members thanked Market Basket for coming to Plymouth?
You could say a couple.
Yeah. And I'm not thanking them. I am just,
Right, that would, I mean, I don't think that's the purview of the board to do that.
It was a general descriptor.
Was it for coming or for the application? Because sometimes
Didn't
those
make their
get...
application yet?
No, but I mean, as far as the preview. Because you guys often thank people when after they present, thank you
Right.
much,
And
I think that's what it was, now that you mentioned that, it was for,
Representatives will be here.
right,
for their
what's.
preview.
we
Right.
did thank them for coming as a preliminary discussion. I don't know if that was reflected in the, I think it was, I was quoted in the paper for saying, thanks for coming for preliminary discussion, but not, but, yeah.
So should it read that, Madam Chair?
What does everyone think? What most accurately reflects what happened?
Well, I can only say what I heard was, thank you, Market Basket, for coming to Plymouth.
Yeah, I think in general, we should be careful about thanking an applicant for coming here before we accept and
Yes.
approve an application. So just as we move forward, I think that would be wise. I think it's just cart before the horse a little bit.
Or we could just strike it in its
Yeah, you could strike
entirety?
it, yeah.
Okay, let's strike it.
I don't care.
My next comment is in the public comment section, the first bullet. Frank Miller spoke about food service capacity of the town. I think it was grocery service. It wasn't food service, was how I understood it, or grocery stores.
I thought he was talking about
said-
restaurant
I
seating.
did too, because
He
he
was,
said
okay,
something
okay,
about
then that's-
seating and tables or something.
Okay, then we'll leave that. That's fine. Anything else?
I would move that we approve these minutes, and I don't even think we made any edits, did we? Maybe
We struck one thing from
we
it.
struck one thing? Okay, as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Stay.
Thank you. Next up, Scott Knapp from the co-op. Hello, would you like to join us at the table?
Sure can.
There's a chair here and a microphone here for you and everything. Yeah.
So I brought some handouts. Hi, all.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. I'm here to talk to you guys about some trees along Main Street in Plymouth. I've been talking with Brian, and we've been talking about sustainability and trying to find something that works both for the town and the utility. And I proposed that we insert 3 new trees that will be sustainable for the town, where they won't grow up into the utilities. They'll add beauty to the town. The trees there are large. They've grown all around the utility lines, which becomes a safety issue, and after pruning could be aesthetically unpleasing. So before we did anything, I talked to the town and wanted to present some options. I do have multiple handouts. First, I'd like to hand out, we have, I brought some for everybody. We have a list of trees that's acceptable under our standards for planting underneath the utilities. Thanks, Scott. This is a, I don't want to say a simple list, but it's a quick, small, short list that can get people started. We provide this to our members.
Thanks.
And help them understand the right tree in the right place, which really what it comes down to. Beyond that, I have drawn up a more comprehensive list that I tend not to hand out to the public, as it can make it a little bit more confusing.
Thank you, Scott.
But I'd like to share that with you guys.
Thank you.
And my stay for the rest of, I'll give you a nice one. And so then I also started thinking about what would be a good tree for along Main Street. I know that there was some criteria or objectives. What we wanted to achieve was that we didn't want the tree to grow out into the road. We didn't want it to grow up into the wires. We wanted it to be pretty much a perfect tree for that site. So in all my thinking, the best candidate would be a tree lilac. You guys actually have a couple of those printed out, a big copy, hopefully to get a better picture. I couldn't find a good picture. But actually, you guys have quite a few of them planted along the street.
Thank you.
Not under the utilities, but from the corner by the Rotary, almost all the way down. There's some planted in front of the new Bank of New Hampshire, and there's some down by the corner down there. It's a good tree. It's showy, has flowers. It's very hardy. There's another copy for everybody if you want one. The best part is that they're not fast growing. They don't grow very tall, and would only need minimal maintenance as they, again, they're hardy. Sorry.
Thank you.
But there are other options, and I'm open to suggestion. Thank you. And as the utility arborist for the co-op, what I can do for the town is I can provide a tree crew to remove the tree, take it down. The wood picked up by the town, and if the town could dig the stump out, I would provide 3 new trees to be planted. And I know that that would work well with, I believe that there's, the Panther Pub might be having some additions added where it might narrow the walkway. Because there's one in front of the 6 burner, 2 leaders have already broken out of it. The one in front of Panther Pub is more than 2/3 crown in the utility line, and then the same in front of the utility, the laundromat, which is right next door. The pear trees that are planted are prone to failure. They have bad branch unions. And, with that being said, and seeing what already happened in front of Six Burner, I feel like this would be a good candidate. It'd be a good mutual relationship with the town and the co-op to find a sustainable candidate that would work well for everybody. So, and I also brought, I also brought a planting guide. This was designed by the state, some employees of the state of New Hampshire. It talks about right tree, right place. It talks about the right way to plant. Actually, New York City used this for their 1,000,000 trees in 10 years as how to plant. I don't know if you guys have heard of that campaign they did.
State
Haven't.
tree plant.
And they actually use this guide as they're planting. It's something that
really good.
I'm also on the New Hampshire Arbor Association. And, I like to promote it as a positive thing.
So I have a question.
Yes.
No, you're fine, you're fine. You're talking syringa.
Correct.
No, that's the state tree plant of the state of Idaho.
Okay.
New
I
Hampshire
did not know
too.
that.
Syringes, New Hampshire as well,
Yeah.
or lilac, yeah.
Not this variety though.
No.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I'm from Idaho, so.
I was like, wow, that's amazing. I know all the state trees in New England, I don't know beyond that. Yeah.
So I was thinking, this looks kind of bushy in the bottom and stuff.
Yep.
Can you train it so that, or, when you deliver a tree, how tall is it gonna be?
Correct. So what I would do is I would go to the nursery and find the best size tree. They range from 2 to 2.5 inch caliper on the low side, and they can go up as big as 5-inch caliper.
Are the branches, is it kind of like wide at the bottom, or?
No,
Okay.
this one is more oval shaped. It wouldn't be round, it'd be more oval. So that would eliminate traffic and pedestrians.
Okay. Are they salt tolerant?
They are very hardy. It is the #1 candidate for street trees right now. It's a great street tree. If there wasn't utility lines there, there'd be other good candidates, but they're a little bit taller growing, so.
I think the problem with the pears, the Bradford pears, was that they were never pruned to begin with, because it's not like these trees, a lot of them are the same. It's not that the Bradford pear is a particularly big tree.
They grew to be big trees
They
now.
will, and it wasn't even that. They weren't like the one in front of the Panther Pub that has that giant leader that's growing right up in the wires. That, where it's positioned, that could have been pruned to keep it out of the wires. I guess my question is this: is there even a chance, or have we totally given up on having like real big street trees to create a canopy, to create an enclosed space, to actually look nice? That live long time, or is because I think there's a lot of big street trees that don't shed branches that if we, with judicious pruning, could be kept away from the wires till the canopy is above the wires,
Good, yeah,
and we'd have a much nicer looking Main Street.
give or take, yes. I agree with that. The only issue you run into is you have buildings, you have wires, and the only real way to go is out over the street, and which would potentially cause failure because the tree would be weighted towards the road. I think if I were planning a landscape, I would plan for smaller, shorter trees that wouldn't interfere with the wires, would be more symmetrical, that would be sustainable. On the opposite side, where there's no wires, plant those larger trees that can be big, beautiful trees. And there's quite a list of trees that could be that way. the whole other side of the street where I don't know who's cutting is that the town? Is someone building a park over there?
That's all private property.
Private property?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that whole side over there has, could be great big trees over there. Or,
That's Doug McLean's
Okay.
property, and he's going to be putting in some elm hybrids.
American chestnuts or elms?
It might be the American chestnut.
Because he and I were,
Okay.
we were doing some stuff, we were helping the American Chestnut Foundation bag,
Right.
American chestnut over in
Rumney?
Rumney.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in Rumney.
I think I was on one of those.
Were you?
Things, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know,
Yeah, it was, yeah, he's really,
2 years ago.
he's really interested in it. He's growing a couple on his own property. So there's a lot of good options. I think long-term, I understand we want, big trees, but I think in that situation, it's so limited. I think that a shorter, smaller tree that would fit into that small canopy area would be best for that site. And this is just my opinion.
I think what got us into this discussion, or why we're here talking about this, is not something we normally discuss here at the planning board, and this is great, but it was because of trying to get the sidewalk plow between the Panther, where the Panther Pub is gonna have a build out, and the tree.
Yep.
So, and there being some low branches, so just wanna make sure whatever we do stick in there is addressing the initial issue that brought it to our attention in the first place, so.
Yep. I think,
I think it's important to have a decent amount of space between the ground and the canopy.
yeah.
I mean, shrubbery is fine, but these guys are in the retail business and they want visibility from the street.
Yep, and these are trees, and I think that, we can find one that would have a high enough canopy when it starts that it would provide, or we can, do a couple of little limb trims to provide that extra height.
But that also impacts the width of the clear passage of the sidewalk too, if it's shrubbed. So, the
But this
higher
would
that
be-
is,
yeah.
the more apparent space you have.
Yeah, I know that the stem of that pear tree has got to be 12+ inches, and something smaller would start out smaller, and it's a lot slower growing.
And unfortunately, that 12-inch stem is the one that grew towards the building.
Yeah,
Just about every one of these trees, there's an example on campus. If, I don't know who ultimately will make this decision of what the trees should be. And that's why, and Brian, I don't know how this, I really think the town would be well-served to have some kind of tree committee. I would think Doug McLean would be a good candidate for that.
Yeah, it rose, when we were Tree City, and then it kind of disappeared. I think that this pretty much points out to everybody that lack of maintenance is not a good thing for trees.
No.
If nothing else, they will be training them in the future just because of this. And it's just a matter of keeping that going. The tree warden had indicated to me that he would be satisfied with the planning board actually coming up with the solution for this, because it seems to be mostly, at least as far as, appearance of the town in the wheelhouse here, instead of just somebody arbitrarily deciding, I want a cedar, and that way you could incorporate this list into future stuff when like, for example, what happened with Walmart. The board was presented with a number of trees. They X'd out the Norway maples because of the invasiveness of them and went with pines instead. So that was a case where the board actually did have control over what the plantings were. So this would be a good thing to have in our back pocket.
Just pointing out that these are species acceptable for under power lines. Most of the things on here are small shrubby things that they're great shrubs, but their spread is bigger than what we can really handle on a sidewalk. So as we do start considering, this list is good to have, but I think we would need a lengthier list if we were looking at stuff that that we weren't worried about.
Right. This
topping
is
out at a certain
mostly
height.
about height,
Yep.
not width.
Yeah, the list, just to clarify, that list was what we hand out to the membership.
Yeah, makes
It
sense,
was, yeah, so it varies from shrubs to trees. there's a lot of good street trees, but trying to find the right street tree was, I racked my brain for a good solid week. And I couldn't get past this one just because of its hardiness and its beauty. It flowers. There's a lot of positive things with it.
Can we
Pears
move
are
the
good.
wires?
Yeah, trust me. Don't even. I'm beyond. That's
Somebody
not-
had to ask that question.
Yeah. You know.
And I'm concerned, I just looked at some of the dynamics listed here, and it's 20 feet wide.
Yep, it can potentially have a 20-foot spread, and that's at mature growth.
Yes.
Yep. And that, and like, and so it would have a higher canopy, it would be over this, it would be comparable to the pears that are already there. You know, it can be, because it's so.
But it can be pruned
It can be pruned. It's actually a really easy tree to prune. Yeah. It has it has a lot of nice laterals that you can make some nice cuts, and it won't look horrible.
And there's plenty of them on campus if someone, once again, was interested in going to see them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I noticed that a lot of them are really wide and which would be the more of the round canopies. But the one I picked was more oval, so it would have more of a higher canopy. It wouldn't be so low growing for cars and for people walking.
So it's a different strain than, you know, like, is this the one that you're talking about, or what? This seems pretty like wide.
Correct. It's pretty. Yeah. It's all relative. The only difference is the canopy growth. The one is the ivory silk, and the ivory silk has more of an oval canopy to it. I was just I couldn't find anything that would give you guys what I found here. It talks about the problems and the what's the big thing? The suggested use for street trees. It's a flowering tree. It's showy. It's fragrant. It does really well with clay soils, and because it's a street tree, that it's tolerant to salt in situations like that. So,
I think we're pretty limited because of the width, the close proximity to the building, the fact that it's on the street, and compaction of soil and the sidewalk and all those things.
it's a rough spot.
Yeah, so I feel like our choices are pretty limited. I would certainly defer to your expertise. I would like to see a native tree if we could in there, but I just don't think we have, and it doesn't seem like there are other great options. I think we need to put the best thing in there. So, I think this is a great option, so.
I'm wondering, separate from these 3 trees and these 3 spots, what do we do about coordinating the length of Main Street and not just this here, that there, dealing with things piecemeal? Do we have is there a venue or format for a long-term plan that makes a nice looking, cohesive looking downtown, which is, I'm asking, I don't know how it
but
works.
The question, I think that the trees that were selected along there were purposefully chosen to be varied, just for the color variation. I think that if they went with all one, it would look too artificial. We do have the benefit of having 2 distinct areas of street trees, though, South Main Street and the downtown area. So you wouldn't have a visual conflict, if that's what you were thinking. You know, unfortunately, there's not much opportunity to plant across the street because the sidewalks are pretty narrow on that side. So we're limited to what we can do to the easterly side of Main Street.
I have similar concerns like you as well, though, because, so we replace these 3 trees, and then we'll when we have a couple of like vacant holes on Main Street right now, and those we'll probably want to replace with probably this similar tree, and then we've got the other trees that will be replaced maybe a couple of years down the pike. We'll have different size trees, and so it'd be kind of nice to have like a concerted thing, but,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah.
And I see the one of the recently removed trees, the spots just filled in with asphalt.
Yep, we just
That
did
does
that.
not look nice to me.
Horrible, I thought we were getting a tree. Very upset.
Yeah, it looks like crap.
It does.
I guess the asphalt can be removed.
Well, you know, why would you put it in if you're gonna remove?
Right.
I mean,
I
is
agree.
there a plan, is what I'm saying.
There wasn't one, and it was a hazard, so that's why that was filled in. Now there is more or less a plan, or at least one is coalescing, and we could probably see a syringa in there without too much effort.
Who's coming up with the plan? What's the plan? Well, and that's
We're
why,
starting the plan
honestly, here. I mean, I keep pushing this, but I think if we had a tree committee, they could advise the town with people that knew, I'm thinking Steve Sweedler, Doug McLean, a few people in town that are community-oriented, that know trees, and also could work with future plans for Main Street. Maybe we could come up with a system.
Yeah, there's a mechanism for a committee. There's a street tree thing that we have downstairs. I haven't provided you guys with copies, I should have, my mistake. Basically, you have the tree warden, and he's the point man of a tree committee. So there is, and you're right, I think Doug was probably part of that originally, and perhaps Steve too. But as interest waned, everybody found better things to do. So I didn't mean that this is in your lap. I meant that this is the spark that could start that fire, having the conversation here.
And I think this is a good conversation. I also think that this is something that needs to maybe be put into a committee, maybe off the planning board, that's probably a better use of everybody's time. I think this is a good thing to think about.
Well, if that's the case, Madam Chair, then I think the board should come up with criteria. What would you like to see? Obviously, invasive species are out. You take into account, what if you're looking for flowers or foliage. We have constraints because of utilities, all of those things. So perhaps guidelines from the planning board or in concert with the committee.
Right. I think we should work with the committee
Yes,
for sure.
absolutely.
I just think that, go ahead, Bill.
Well, there should be like a greater committee than just a tree committee.
Yes.
It should be like a downtown
Street,
revitalization, Main Street committee, and that was, the standard in the past.
Right, and
Also
that
in the
came out of
master
the
plan.
private sector, though, too.
And also too, you said Steve who? Because, Steve Rand is also, would be instrumental in that as well, especially since he's wrapping up a 2-year term as a rep. He might have some time on his hands to get involved back as well. And that should be, the downtown, Main Street thing should be.
Right, there isn't
Tree
an
committee or
entity
whatever.
for that now.
Right.
Main Street USA was the last.
And there is a recommendation in the master plan that suggests we consider revitalizing such a committee.
Yes.
And it seems like that would be something as we get downtown site plan reviews to invite the committee to come and, look at applications and stuff, and because they're looking at sort of the more cultural side of things, so.
Would that be a select board decision to?
Appoint the committee?
That,
or
well,
what?
yeah, especially if it involved like, Main Street plan beyond just trees, sort of a long-term planning for how Main Street should be developed for aesthetics as well as, business.
Let's take a look at the master plan, see who the,
Who the lead is.
Well, certainly the board would, the Board of Selectmen would give guidance to them, but in the past, these have all come out of the private sector as part of the, downtown revitalization idea. So, if we could get something like that, all the boards would support them, because rightfully it belongs to them. It's their home, so they should have a greater voice than all of us people who live away from downtown or don't have a vital interest in the Main Street. I mean, other than this being our home, but, the merchants and people more involved now.
And I guess that's what I'm thinking, Brian, is say if a bunch of people got together that were interested in and had some expertise in trees and Main Street planning and agreed that they were willing to participate and be motivated enough to continue to do this and give input. Say I went and talked to Steve Rand and some of these other people we've mentioned tonight, and Steve would probably be a good person to talk to. Then what would be the next mechanism? We have a bunch of people interested in
Conversations at this level, and then, the recommendations from the board as far as, you know, what you would like to see in conjunction with what the merchants would do. Obviously, it would have to be done in such a way that it's not, have a burden on anybody who's not, you know, located here. But certainly, we can spend money towards trees, you know, if the budget indicates that. And I don't
Is
think
a body-
anybody is against it. It's just a hard thing to start because there's so many moving parts.
And that's what I'm thinking, if someone was interested in volunteering their time, you know, what would be the next step? What would those volunteers do? Who would they talk to?
And that's the point I'd like to make, is that we as a body are a catalyst,
So the,
facilitate that organization.
in the master plan, we have a recommendation, maintain the viability of downtown, increase the economic value to the town. Kind of falls in there. I know there's something else somewhere. I just don't want to burrow through all of this. But planning board, town admin, and select board are all the leads in that. So, so I think a conversation between someone on the select board, a planning board person, and then folks at the town to try and figure out how to figure this out. So.
I think the merchants group, or, you know, and the planning board are more concerned with the aesthetics, and then the board of selectmen would be more concerned with the dollar end of it.
Right, but then sort of trying to communicate on the logistics of things too,
Yes.
because, you know, trying to get the sidewalk plow through there and maintain public safety and things like that, and that seems like that maybe falls a little more
Yeah,
on the
it did-
admin side of things, so.
You know, it's like everybody's going to need to come to the meeting.
Right.
You know, and everybody's got a little part to play in the whole
And
thing.
particularly because it sounds like we are tearing up Main Street, am I not correct? It for.
South Main Street.
South Main Street for
And it's
what?
not we, but go ahead.
Well, whoever,
Yes.
is it water and
It will be
sewer?
torn up, yes.
Yeah, so if, I mean, there's an opportunity right there, seeing how we're going to be disrupting things anyway. It'd be nice to, you know, have sort of a more overarching plan, like what else can we encompass at the same time while we're doing this? And, yeah, I mean, I kind of lost my train of thought, but that was
Can
one,
I
you
get
know.
back to a question a little while ago about what we would like to see as far as trees on Main Street, because it seems like maybe we need a planning board recommendation for the committee / select board / the co-op. And I would just put to the board that what I would like to see is non-invasive. I mean, that's illegal to plant invasive species anyway, so I don't even think we need to say don't
Yeah.
break the law in our suggestion, but I don't know.
A lot of warning labels on it.
So non-invasive, preferably native, that provide a diversity of foliage and floral something. So a diversity of trees.
Do, cherry trees do pretty good in our state?
Different
I
types.
mean, for me, I love cherry trees. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, I have the natives, and I also have one that I purchased that's taken over my front yard. It does very well.
I
I think I need to find out what that is.
I don't think we necessarily need to say, like, these are the species we want to
Yes.
see. I think we need to put an intent behind what we would like to
Right,
see
I mean,
and have it
if
be
you,
a.
you know, it could be like, draw one from column A, which is
Yeah.
the flowering,
Yeah.
and B, which is the foliage, and C is shade or bird populations, you
Right.
know, then.
But with a preference towards, I think, native species would be my suggestion. But also picking the best species for the location at which it's
Right.
going to be put, so. Which I think is kind of what we just did, so, or what you did.
So two things. One, I applaud you guys. Having a master plan is awesome. It's the first step. Two, I am not a resident of Plymouth, but I'd love to be part of that if the town will accept that. Three, ultimately, I think that the trees that we're talking about right now are the three pear trees, one that has been damaged because of loss of leaders, one because of size and non-maintenance that is right in front of the Panther Pub and the laundromat. So I would like to buy 3 trees, have them planted, we'll take them down, and all we're asking the town to do is help us remove the wood and dig up the hole, and we'll do the rest.
That sounds great.
And your ultimate recommendation is the syringa.
I do. I mean, unless someone else has another idea, I'd be happy to talk about it. But I think Personally, I think that this is the best candidate because of its purpose of flowers, hardiness, and low growth, which meets every check I can possibly think of.
That's great.
And I have a lot of great ideas. I've also been looking at Main Street, and I love Main Street. I used to do a lot of consulting for towns before my job here, and you guys have a lot of potential. And I saw them ripping out that hole. I was like, oh, what are they gonna buy? I was like a kid at Christmas. I love trees.
Who was behind and what was the idea behind the pear trees at the skate park? Was that intended to provide people with food?
I know nothing about that.
Are they,
There are pear trees at the skate park that I think the idea was, eat it.
Are they large pears?
I
Or are they
don't
just
know.
like,
I
you
don't know anything about it, other than what I just said, but isn't that cool, you know? Free food on Main Street.
yes. Yeah, I, sort of along those lines, I went to grad school in Spokane, Washington, and they planted Stanley plums. And, you know, and they're not they're a nice enough tree, but you could eat the plums, and they were everywhere. And it was kind of an amazing thing. The problem with that, and this was one of the problems with these pears, people complained about that fruit. And these pears, the fruit isn't edible. It's like a crab apple. So, and that fruit would drop on people's cars, and birds would come and eat them and then crap all over
Right.
people's cars. So that was definitely an issue. And this,
That's out.
the lilac, the tree lilac certainly wouldn't have that problem. Honestly, the tree lilacs, the only ones I've seen have never been pruned in any way other than to let them grow, and they tend to have branches right down to the bottom. So I'd be kind of curious as to how you prune that, but I mean, it's.
So this one looks like a multi-stem, and that's typically what that does. If they're multi-stem, they'll have lower branching. If it's a single stem, it'll look more like a tree. There's also tree hydrangeas that are really cool that can get really big. There's a lot of options, but for street trees, I think that we can find one that has a canopy that's going to be up in the 6 to 10 foot range that'll start, and it'll start go up from there. And if it isn't, we can prune it in a manner that'll make it a little bit. It'll increase the clearance.
And Brian, what's going to happen to these trees when they do start to tear up Main Street?
You mean the sidewalks?
Yeah, I mean, is it all going to be in the road? Are the trees totally safe from construction?
Well, I mean, vehicles would probably be the number one thing. I don't anticipate much expansion construction along Main Street just because of the nature of the beast. The Panther Pub was the very first one that was actually expanding its footprint since I've been here at town. So that's, 12 years. Just by the nature of the development on Main Street, there isn't a lot of room to come forward. They either go backwards or up.
I'm thinking of the, is it water line?
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer. What's that going to do to the sidewalks? Anything? Is that going to impact these trees?
Oh, when they do the work?
Yeah.
No, most of that will be occurring on the westerly side of South Main Street. There will be laterals, but I don't know where those are located, that Water and Sewer has that. But you would see essentially a great big trench on the southbound lane, and then cut patches across as they had to dig and tie up to the new, depending on how the lateral, what condition it's in, it's going to the main, both for water side and the sewer side, is going to determine what they have to do. If it's totally rotted out or if it's an old hollowed out log, as many of them were, that'll have to be replaced at that time, and they'll probably take it up to the private property, which may include digging through the sidewalk. I don't know if any of the trees are in locations where those laterals are. It may very well be that each of the ones along North Main Street has a water line running right through it. I honestly don't know the answer to that. But it's the impact of the big dig is pretty much going to be confined to this side of the street.
Okay. So, sounds like we're okay with the lilac. Everyone's thumbs up on the lilac, and
I'm just reading about the roots. We're okay with the roots and not,
All roots have potential problems, but I don't think that this is a very aggressive tree.
Is
that
it a
would-
shallow rooted or is it?
they're all, when the terminology of shallow rooted versus deep rooted, they all need oxygen. So they're not gonna grow down as low as there's no oxygen. And usually if they're high up is because of the water. They can't survive in a lot of water. It'll drown out the roots. So typically roots are 2 to 3 feet down in a plate. So I wouldn't see it as a problem.
And, you know, sometimes, like, a lot of cities will protect the base of the tree with some kind of slotted covering that water can get out through. Anything like that gonna happen, or?
I don't think so. I was looking at the pear trees that are up in front of like the ski shop up there. I didn't see any protection. I typically don't believe in that. I kind of think let the tree be. You know, if you put some nice mulch around it, typically short of kids, stay off of it.
How much of a hole in the asphalt would it require for good growth?
Well, that's the thing. You know, Burlington led the way, as far as I know, in providing a huge area for it underneath. So, but for what it is, I mean, we can make what is already there work.
Okay. Something, because that's of the smaller size of the openings compared to
Because
North Main
honestly,
Street.
that pear tree is huge.
And that tree isn't gonna be put in the same place.
It would be put in the same place. I
Well,
believe.
actually.
Or would it?
No, it'll
not
be
according-
shifted to the
Yeah,
south.
according to our tree warden.
Yeah, no, I didn't know the whole master
Yeah.
plan with that.
It'll be within 4 or 5 feet of where it's
Okay.
located now. Probably in the same
And
line.
whatever we can do to make that work, I think, you know, if we can even just put some loam underneath, and then we could even put some pavement up to it, that would minimize the amount of, you know, dirt area or mulched area, and the tree would still be able to put out enough roots. Yeah, I see this as, you know, an empty canvas that can be drawn in any which way.
And of course, you know, one of the problems with those pears is there was never any maintenance.
Right.
Including, like if you're gonna mulch around the base of the tree, every year, there should be some new mulch at the base of the tree. Whose
Our-
jurisdiction would that be? Parks and
Our
Rec?
gardeners now are Park and Rec. And one would assume that they would be point on that. They probably won't like it because they're maintaining an awful lot now. But this would be maybe an every other year visit, I mean, as far as assessing it for the need to be pruned. Replacing the mulch every year, I don't think is that big of a deal. You know, a guy in a wheelbarrow could do those 3 trees in an hour.
And I can provide some mulching guidelines. Mulching's really important. If you put too much mulch down, you can again bury the tree and cause girdling roots and vascular problems. So it's really important to have the correct amount of mulch and the right level, and all those things can really prolong the life of a tree.
Is Morris Brandendorfer, is he still on? Yeah, so he would know, he's pretty good with trees.
Yeah, as is Jim.
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so I think, again, we're good with the lilacs. We're all giving the thumbs up on the lilacs. Because I feel like we need to maybe think about if we need to have this, a tree committee or the Main Street committee. I think that needs to be something that's offline or off the planning board, off our plate here. So, I don't know if it's something that the conversation can continue between Brian as a town employee or town admin rep and Chris, since you've got the interest in here, and then figure out maybe some next steps on how to make that happen.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah. And Scott?
I'd love to be on board.
Yeah, I'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah,
That's great.
that'd be great. I can get you one of my cards, or it could chain email. I didn't bring any in with me.
the only thing you didn't bring.
I know. But I really appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in too. This has actually been, this has been great, so.
Any questions? All right, we go.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next up, discussion on procedures when an applicant fails to substantially complete a site plan review and allows it to lapse.
I can give you some background on that.
Can I just ask one quick question? Is this beyond what's in our site plan review?
Yes. The Bridge House in January of 2017 got site plan approval for a residential addition and fumbled the ball. I received a building permit application for it yesterday. I looked back in the files and saw that the site plan review had expired as of January 2018.
Oh, 2018, okay, so we're way past expect.
So I put the question out to PlanLink
I have seen
to
that.
see whether it would be an administrative thing or the other. Overall, we have to consider it as a new application. I was talking to Kathy Bentwood about it, and so there's enough time to get this legally onto the next board meeting. Is the best I could do for her. Since nothing has changed, either in the design or there might be minor changes in the design, but nothing has changed zoning-wise or even indications in the master plan since that was proposed. It should be almost a reconfirmation, and I'm leaving that entirely up to you, but this is just my assessment of it, of the previous site plan after reviewing it. And I let her know that this afternoon. So a lot of the questions the question was basically answered after I had this printed out. Or you may also come with other suggestions. Though many of the things on the plan indicated that a one-year time frame was kind of short. In cases like the Bridge House, where they need to have approval before they can seek the funding for it, it's kind of upside down, and it may take longer than that 1 year for them to actually do substantial completion, or even not get the answers quick enough to ask for an extension. And that's an administrative decision by the board as far as how long you want to authorize approvals for. And that was essentially kind of the question that I wanted to bring to you, see if you saw it the same way I did.
So can they ask for extension? I thought
Yes,
it
they
has
may.
Up to 3 years, isn't it? And then it has to lapse
Yeah,
completely? or-
but they got the 1 year, they have to reapply or ask for it at public hearing before that year is up, and that's totally gone by.
Right.
It says approved site plans for reasonable cause, may, for a reasonable cause, be extended for a period of no more than 1 year by the board on receipt of a written request for extension received at least 30 days prior to the expiration date of the site plan approval. And we've changed a couple of the deadlines on some of the ZBA determinations of special exceptions and
Right, and I
variances and
was
things like
wondering if
that.
this one was as well, and I found that the only version of the site plan review regulations that I had, and it indicated 1 year.
Yeah, and it was for, I think, special exceptions and
Okay.
variances is what we did, I believe, there are now 2 years. And that
Right.
was actually, we considered that because of the Harbor Homes development, and they were dealing with similar issues. I think our site plan review regs are over 10 years old at this point. I think they probably do need a overhaul, is my guess. Doing it I don't know if we want to pull out just one thing
Right.
to change. It's something we certainly, I think, want to change. I also think that asking for an extension within a month of the expiration date, it does give us it does grant some leeway for the board that we can add further extensions at our own discretion. So it's pretty loosey-goosey, really. It's just a matter of the applicant knowing that they need to come back before us.
Yes.
So, So I mean, I think we're covered, at least allowing to be pretty flexible. It's just we need an applicant to be on it.
Yeah, yes.
So,
That's exactly the case here, Madam
yeah.
Chair.
And I don't think that we have the, it doesn't look to me like we can say, you know, do you think you're gonna need more time to get your funding in order? But with applications like that, if we can remember to, you know, if they're
Yes.
dealing, often we know that they're dealing with grant funding and things like that, and we can just remind them, okay, if you get close to this deadline, you need to come to us 30 days beforehand.
So you think the 1 year is good as it stands?
For
If we can
now-
remember to ask the questions.
Yes, for now. I just don't think changing one thing in the
Right, no,
site
no.
plan review is
No,
worth
and
our
I
time right
wasn't
now.
advocating that at
Yeah.
all. Basically, we have to consider it as a new application statutorily. However, since the second bullet is about roundtabling tasks, and you just picked a good one there.
Yeah.
with, take a look at the site plan review regulations, take a look at the subdivision regulations, see if something is archaic or things have transpired interim that need to be included in there.
Yep.
Since that's all done at the administrative level, that's, and you've picked, this one kind of came at a fortuitous time for us.
Yep.
You know, because it kind of fits in with the agenda for the work sessions going forward.
Yep.
But it's just another thing to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's just, I mean, I don't know what else maybe needs to change, but we were amending them quite regularly through the late 90s, early 2000s, but I think it's probably time to dig into this, but, yeah, but not this evening. Does anyone else? Has everyone read the site plan regulations? Does everyone have them?
I don't believe.
I don't even know if I have them, and I just dropped my whole binder. That's why I was looking, and.
Yeah.
I know I've given them to all the new members, and if you need them, just shoot me an email and make sure you get them.
They're $10. It says so right here.
I'll give you a break, I'll give them to you for $5.
Nice.
But that's something else that I want to have like a list and like the binders with like a table of contents for every, we haven't had a new board member in a while, but just to make sure that everyone is reviewing these, and it's good to dig through them regularly.
Aha,
Let me see what it looks like.
$10.
A gold star for that one.
Okay, I'll have to look, because I just might have it. I don't know if I've been through it or not. I could go through it and forget it.
It's underneath that rose bush. Don't want to stain the table.
Yeah, I'll look.
All right.
I might have that at home. Thanks.
Because I think as far as we're good, so I think they need to go through obviously need to go through the site plan review. It stinks that we're, putting through a good organization, making them go through this again, but
Right.
that doesn't really play into it. It
Right,
just-
and
it's-
unfortunately, there's no grace to be given by the board after expiry either, so.
Right. But I think the board is probably fresh enough too that, if we can make sure we have the notice of decision, it usually comes with it from the previous approval.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring all the, or make sure that you guys all have the minutes and everything from the previous one, just to familiarize yourself with it.
And as long as the applicant realizes that it is a new board, so they might need to give more background. that
Yes.
I think there's only a couple of us that were here at the time, so, because we honestly do have to treat it as a new application.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You got quite the response on the plan link. Yeah.
Every so often.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It aids me to no end. I mean, a lot of this stuff, which is equivocal, you get to at least plumb the thinking of similar towns and
Mm-hmm.
find out how they handle it. Some are really strict in everything that they do. I mean, down to the wire, and others, there's one person that wears all the hats in town. It's good.
Yeah, I bet those strict towns have really boring meetings too.
I bet.
Ask Jules about it. She sits on the planning board in Franklin, I think.
Tilton.
Tilton, it's Tilton, okay.
Okay. I've sat through the Holderness ones. They're not as fun as ours. All right, before we get into this roundtable discussion of the administrative tasks, just something to kind of discuss as a board, because I'm assuming we're getting the Market Basket site plan review.
Yes, it's on my table.
Okay.
It came in.
So we had a quick discussion about the development of regional impact. I had so many papers stacked here that I didn't even see that there was information from the Lakes Region Planning Commission about the DRIs.
A bit of background on that. I had just the previous week attended the local meeting, and that was the subject of discussion. So I figured, it had been brought up before, and they had some pretty good guidelines there.
The local meeting?
Yeah, it was over at the Holderness for Lakes Region.
Okay.
And I think we sort of I'll acknowledge that we do think that this is a development of a regional.
May I ask why?
Well, did anyone want to?
I would like to offer a comment,
Yep.
and this is pertaining strictly to placement of Market Basket in Plymouth. It belongs to Plymouth. We can invite other communities to come, to participate, but it is not a regional impact.
Okay.
I actually went through the regional impact guidelines, and just for the heck of it, where you can say yes, no, whatever. Every one of these, except for two, I came up with a no, service or groundwater impacts. I'm not too good with that.
No.
And will the development require a major impact wetland permit? And it's like, well, okay,
Yeah.
that I don't know about. So
Yeah.
those two, I didn't know if it was yes or no. The rest of them are all no. It's not gonna,
Traffic generation?
not for another town.
Not for the region.
I think, wasn't Steve Whitman was the one who brought this up, and he kind of tied it into what I was saying, but I didn't see how it connected, but I think what he was saying was the runoff that goes into the Baker River would then head downstream. Wasn't that it? And,
Oh, yeah, I would say it certainly is going to impact surface water.
and so, I mean, I guess, I
So
hold
is, so is Walmart.
Right, right. Yeah.
Walmart's there.
I know.
We can't turn back the clock, even though our agenda says September 13th. So we can't, I think we can't use what has been done in the past. I think we can only start from this moment moving forward.
Well, the past is history, and
Yes.
if you don't look at history, you're gonna fail.
So we are legally bound if we believe that that it's a regional impact. There are, other towns have been brought to court, have been sued because they didn't acknowledge, they didn't notice, or,
It's not a regional impact. It impacts the town of Plymouth.
so it's something we have to vote on. We have to vote on it when we have the application on hand. And we need 14 days to give the towns. I would view it as a butter notice. It's not saying, hey, other town, come and give your feedback on this
There's a
development.
form letter for this.
Right. And I imagine it's the exact same thing that we get when we get cell phone tower,
Exactly.
just, hey, this development's going in Plymouth. We have to give it to the Regional Planning Commission and any towns that we think.
It's kind of a one-sided deal. There is no punishment unless you're actually sued, but there's no statutory fines or any punishment to a town for not doing it. Case in point is the wind towers. And that definitely hits the criteria in so many ways that was never brought up. I mean, it was brought up here at Town Hall. We were never notified. And, I'm not saying tit for tat. I'm saying that if we can be held hostage to something like that, where it absolutely is, I mean, you can't see those things from Groton or the town of Groton.
Right.
But, and yes, Market Basket is a big deal for Plymouth, but it's just another grocery store.
So.
regionally.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there for a second, Brian. This is something that we'll have to vote on as a
Yes.
board, and it's once we receive the application. I actually don't know if we can vote on it until they come before a public hearing. And if we're talking about it, we have to have a discussion about it with a public hearing.
Yes.
And if, when in doubt, I'm not advocating for one way or another. We'll vote, and it'll be a majority vote and determine whether it's a regional impact or not. But I just want to make sure that this could delay the process.
It kind of does a disservice to the applicant who's already vetted his application before the board. But the board is the board.
Board is the board,
I will
and-
support you as I
You're right,
always
the
do.
board is the board, and we'll make a vote during that process. We can also, if we feel like we're doing a disservice to the applicant, we could also decide to continue the public hearing to the next,
Put in
to our
like a-
work session.
Okay.
If the board is amenable to that. That's not something I always like to do, but if there's no reason why we can't do it, why wouldn't we just, if we want to, and we are in no obligation to approve any application the day it comes to us, even if they've come to a discussion. We need to make a good decision, not a quick one, so.
And I think also that by having the benefit of having a preview of the letters could have gone out at that point, because there was essentially an application before you with non-binding comments. If that's the case, that would be the perfect opportunity to notify the abutting towns, for the real meeting. If they bother to show, there may or may not be anybody coming up. But
So,
yeah,
do we have an application before us? We don't have,
We don't have an
No,
application.
you
so-
will next meeting.
And so I don't think we could have voted on it before because it says that, I don't have the LRPC, if after review of the application by the planner or by the board. So, you could notice it's tomorrow, 14 days? I think today is 14 days, so.
Yes, but in my assessment,
You assess that it's not, so we'll have
that
to do it.
it's
okay,
not, so,
Yep.
if we're gonna, it ultimately is yours.
Yep.
And since you appeared to be of different minds about this, it would be better for the board to handle it
Yep.
than for us. I mean, we're pretty much on record about notification, not about the project, but just the notification part of it. It would be better to have it done probably then. And if that's the case, this is kind of a new one for everybody here, and especially in the light of this project. You're right, the past is the past, but the past also leads to precedents. And the fact that none of those have been noticed so far indicates to me that either the board failed or they weren't projects of regional impact. That's all I have to say about that.
and if push comes to shove, and we having a question, we also have an attorney. So,
Yep.
that's,
Yeah, he's a good one, too.
And I actually have discussed this with the executive director of the Lakes Region Planning Commission as a side note to a totally different meeting. But so I do have a discussion with them as well, and that's what they're there for as well. I mean, they've provided a lot of the structure, so, yeah.
I just would like to say, after all this time of what Market Basket has done and gone through to get here, I would hate to do anything to hold it up any further. I really would.
We're talking 2 weeks. And I think our job is to make a good decision, not a quick one. So I don't
Right,
think.
but I have to, I don't see anything, I think we've made some good decisions, and I don't see myself where it has a regional impact.
Well, and
That's just my opinion.
And I would also like to point out that Bonnie is recused from discussions on that. And
Oh, yes, I am, because
So-
I'm in a butter. So,
Yes.
yeah. If it's going to have an impact on everybody, I guess it will me.
whisper in my ear. Oh, don't-
And I think it's important that we toe the line as close as we can on this project.
Yes,
Because
I
of the
agree.
history. So,
I agree.
and that's the history that I think we do need to learn from. And I totally get the issues that we weren't notified on a lot of other issues, but it's important to me that we do the right thing. And I'm not saying what the right thing is, but it's important to me that we make good
Oh,
decisions. so,
absolutely. And I support you in that.
Yeah, so, okay. So we will just maybe review the document from the Lakes Region Planning Commission, and maybe with your help, Brian, I might want to reach out to the town attorney.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I can provide that information to the board. So,
And can you, or do we need Steve Whitman here? Because I'm not clear on why, and I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not saying I agree with everything you're saying, but just, can you give clarification on why this would have a regional impact?
I mean, I see the thing that flags for me is the surface water and traffic and light. So,
But the light will not cross the borders.
I'm gonna stop you, Ryan. I feel like I think it's important that this is a board discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm happy to have a discussion with you offline about it, if that works.
Okay.
So,
And the board would discuss this when we have an application before us.
we're gonna have to discuss it at the next meeting, so.
So I have a question. Am I going to be included in any of this because of me being in a butter? As far as this regional impact and, what we're doing?
If you're in a butter, I don't think you can be a part of any part of the conversation about.
About market.
So she could be a public.
She can discuss.
Oh, you can,
And that might even be more effective. You could be,
yeah.
in the public.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely would be in that end, but I just don't, there's no point in me getting involved in the
No.
board when I can't be.
Right.
So I will just keep my mouth shut.
No. No?
And honestly, this is
Oh, no,
great
there, I know.
because I feel like we don't have enough discussions on our applications. So if we can have some heated discussions, that's awesome.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Requesting.
Right on.
that's why we're here. That's why this board is here, is not necessarily to rubber stamp everything and not to fight everything, but to figure out the balance and what is most appropriate. So,
Good point.
yeah. So-
Can I ask a question about public comments? So my guess is particularly if, word gets out that there's going to be some discussion on, because I think there's some pretty vocal proponents of market basket coming to town. I think we could have a big turnout. I don't know how big, but, I think a lot of people could be here. And I think it would be important for you, and correct me if this is, if there's some reason that this can't happen, but the last meeting, I sort of got off track and started talking about something that wasn't on the table, it wasn't part of the purview. Unfortunately, when I did that, I think it got other people doing the same thing. I wonder, as one of your duties as the chair, can you tell the public what's in bounds? Like, this is the scope. We're not talking about jobs coming in. None of that stuff is germane to the conversation. This conversation is about the site plan review. And I'm just thinking, because otherwise we could have a very long meeting of people saying things, it's nice that they get to vent, but this thing is a done deal unless the site plan review has an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with whether Market Basket should come to town. I mean, it's,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's hard to limit public discussion. I think our bylaws specify 3 minutes per person, which is actually quite short. We can, if we want, I'm happy, well, I might ask someone else to run a timer while I try. I forget running timers, but we can start running a timer and cut people off.
But so, what if they start talking about competition and jobs? Those things, there's no reason to talk about that. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying to
Limit the
perhaps
scope.
introduce the purpose of the meeting more specifically to direct the discussion to
Yes.
appropriate topics?
I can do my best to try but I feel like no talking about job creation. But those things are all gonna come, and I'm talking about unicorns, but like the list is infinite, it's.
And
So-
and I think that newspaper article did an incredible disservice to this discussion, because that newspaper article made it sound like this like there was a debate whether Market Basket was coming to town. It would be amazing if for some reason we found something in the site plan review that Market Basket couldn't come to town. Market Basket is here. I think people are worried that somehow, there, something's good, some roadblock is gonna be thrown in the way. That's not a
very real.
It is
And
real.
it's
And that's,
It is
and that's
real.
not a discussion. I mean, I think that this project has been approved, this site has been, prepared and approved. It's just a matter of them complying to site plan review. And that's a discussion between us and them. It's, they're incredibly amendable, I think. I think they've been good about accommodating us. So I just can see that if we get a big turnout from the public and they're worried about this thing might get shot down, all night long, we're gonna hear about, all the jobs it's gonna bring in and all, the good competition and prices are gonna be, all things we don't need to be talking about. Can we limit the scope of that conversation?
I don't feel,
I don't think you can.
I don't feel comfortable limiting anybody's, I mean, I feel like we can say, these are the things these are the things on the table for us as far as a discussion goes. All I can do is go back to the bylaws and limit it by time and just start at 3 minutes. I am not that excited about doing that, to be honest, unless it gets out of control.
Well, so can people talk about whatever they want?
That was going to be my next question. You certainly could limit discussion to site plan review
Yep.
and the facts of the site plan
Right.
review. And as people stray, and they always do.
Yep.
That would be,
Yep.
there'll be a lot of yanking back, I think, if it goes the way that Chris does.
And that's exactly what when I started getting off topic, I thought the way you handled that, and I think was perfect, and I think you could do that with people. It wasn't like, all right, that's, the way you presented it was, this is what we're supposed to be talking about. That really has, and you could say it nicely, like that's, your fears are unallayed. You don't have to worry about that. That's been taken care of.
Yeah.
And you could probably be a lot more articulate than I feel I'm being tonight, but.
I don't know. I think, and I think I think front-loading it is probably what I would like to do. I don't think I can interrupt people during their time. I don't feel comfortable interrupting the public during their allotted time, except to tell them that they're out of their allotted time.
But if you lay out the groundwork of things that are on the table for discussion,
Yep.
and they stray, you could certainly say, could you bring it back to the guidelines that were offered before the public hearing was open? I think everybody understands that. Everybody, has passion for a lot of the stuff that goes on here.
Do you understand that, Bonnie?
No. No, I haven't.
When you get gavelled, don't complain.
I can take it.
Uh,
I don't think I've gavelled anybody.
But it's clear that there's misunderstanding about the
Yes.
purview
Yes.
of the board. That's really clear.
In the process, it's.
Right.
Correct.
And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of now. A lot of people still haven't forgotten about Lowe's, that everybody was looking forward to all the good things that were going to come along with that. And I've heard a lot of people say, Plymouth isn't going to let you do this. Plymouth won't let you do that. That's us. And we don't, and if they get a hint that we're going to do anything to hold Market Basket up now, they're going to be.
Well, if they watched us
Aggravated.
on TV right now, I'd like to think that they wouldn't think that.
Yes.
They should-
Me too, but I don't think many of them watch it.
What's our
Right.
Nielsen rating?
Pretty good,
My
actually.
dad usually watches.
My daughter won't,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can do our best to sort of guideline it, and if they stray, I might need some help. Just give me sort of, I don't know,
Signal.
yeah.
Is that
It may be
split
that
back, right?
because there wasn't a whole lot of pre-opposition to the continued development out there, we might not see the same responses in the audience.
I'm actually surprised we didn't have more people here.
Yeah.
2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
really.
Yeah.
Well, that might be because they don't feel that it's as much of an issue as it
Right.
was in 2013.
Right. Well, there's also, maybe people do understand the fact that the compensation pit is there, the pre-development is there. That site has been impacted, that site is slated for development. so-
Something's going to go there.
Yes.
Something is going to go there, so.
Yep.
I'm happy to run a timer.
I think maybe we need to just gauge if there's a lot of people here, then maybe it's time to pull in the timer.
Yeah.
Our bylaws specify 3 minutes.
I think there's an hour.
I'll bring another gavel.
For who?
Maybe like a one with a hatchet end?
And I don't think there needs to be any rudeness. I think
No.
it just, just exactly,
Yeah.
when I got off topic, how you,
And since we're discussing this, so someone speaks, they often need to ask a question to the applicant responds. Sometimes we do need to respond to them. Are we okay with, instead of just getting this massive, like, comment, taking the time to respond to people as they bring up issues? Is that what? Yeah. Okay.
Oftentimes, it's technical questions, which obviously are better answered by the engineer, and it's also better answered immediately.
Yep, I agree.
I've done that before, where you get lost in your rebuttals, when you're allowed to speak at the end. So it's your meeting, Madam Chair. I mean, if that works for you, you can certainly set it up that way.
I think it makes sense to address issues, and sort of people have, sometimes it's just, okay, thank you, and then next person, other
Right.
times it's, okay. All right. I was pretty nervous before the last meeting. I was expecting to get ripped apart, so I was pleased that it was as mellow as it was, so.
You said
They
it on the
applaud due
microphone, you get ripped
diligence,
apart.
but they don't applaud, like, anti-things, And of course, you can't speak for a project before you until you bring it into, the vote. But, and I think Jack said it well, we've been burned before on this one in the very same spot that caused, real division in the town of Plymouth. I think it's a gentler climb now, and you said people understand what's going on out there at this point in time. But again, passions get inflamed, so it may be that, we're building ourselves up and nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Oh, and I don't mean to.
but it's good to be prepared.
I don't mean to gloss over the wounds of what's happened there in the past, but sometimes I feel like we are a fresh board. We haven't dug into a big project like this ever. So I think sort of remembering that stuff, but not focusing too much about what happened then. I think we can still make a good decision. So.
The pad's there. The corporation is behind it. They're going to make it happen. We need
Decides.
Yeah.
we need to support the decisions that we've already made.
I think, all right, I think we may be wrapping this up now before we get too much in discussing the specific application and less about the procedure surrounding it. And, yeah, this has gone longer than I thought it might.
Would this be a good time for me to make a motion or not? Or
We
is there
still have
something
this
else?
roundtable discussion of planning
Okay.
board administrative tasks for the coming year.
Which is kind of what we've been doing. but
Okay. Are there any zoning things that we said we wanted to get on the slate?
I
and-
do have a couple that have been popping up.
Okay.
One is about setback incursions in the front, making them, if they're equal to the existing, say you have a building that's, the front part of it is 15 feet into the front setback of 30 feet, and you want to put an addition on it, that you hold the building line as the setback line, the pre-existing building line. So if you're putting this addition here that held the same front line, that would be a special exception use. Anything over the line would be revert to a variance use. And especially in older communities, you see that a lot. Not in the front so much, but there's, most of them are built too close to the road to begin with. That was the old style of building. Everybody's right up there. I think probably almost 100% of the village doesn't meet the setback requirements, either on the fronts or the sides, because it didn't exist when it was built. But, sometimes that's the only opportunity on the smaller lots in town. The only available space you have would be part of the front of your property. If you're already occupying into the setback, call that the new line. And I have, some audio-visual aids, or just visual aids to assist you in
are
seeing how
you
this
thinking of like
works.
in neighborhoods?
Yeah, any place, any home that, say you're, and it's also, pre-existing non-conforming only. Because, you know, if anything that was built since 2007, it meets the 30-foot setback. You know, I know that for a fact. You know, there may have been ones before, but certainly my house, and probably your house, do not meet current setbacks. Yours does, because you were built, you know, later. Bill's does. Bonnie's does.
Have you been measuring our houses?
Worrisome.
Well, I know the general area where you live, so, you know, I can draw conclusions on that. I do know where she lives, and I know where Chris lives, and I know where Jack lives, and I know where Bill lives. The rest of you, and Bonnie, because I inspected her home. You know.
It's interesting to, like, so what's
And I want to talk to you about your diet.
Yeah.
the purpose of setbacks? The purpose of this, of having residences set back?
Yes.
What's the philosophy, with the theory?
Well, I think part of it had to do with if the road would ever need to be widened. The other, I think, is aesthetics only. And, you know,
Safety access.
well, it's 30 feet. You know, you can get there quicker if it was 15.
But still, safety access.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, there used to be setbacks on the sides because of fire laws, and those have pretty much gone away. The reason for the front setback, I don't know, probably just for pedestrian and vehicle safety
You know, because,
For large pear trees.
and large pear trees.
well, in the original, the way people purposely built out to the sidewalk and had their porch out in the front of the house, because that was part of being in a community. And that, you know, it was before we had high-speed traffic and lots of traffic, but that was kind of a nice way. Those houses are nice, you know, you sat on your front porch and you got to see who was walking by and say hi to them, and
Chat with your
And you knew
neighbors.
everybody.
Less to shovel.
you know, so it's kind of a weird thing that, you know, we've totally gotten away from that. And now our house, we're right on that dirt road, and when people drive by in the summer, you get a cloud of dust. But I don't know, it's just an interesting aside that isn't necessarily a bad thing to have your houses, you know, that's.
And
Are you worried
there
about
were a
that
couple
now?
others, and I brought the wrong book with me that had the list in it, but they're tweaks, mostly to existing zoning. There were the other questions that have been brought up in the past about redrawing zone lines.
Yeah,
to
we're not
make
doing
sure
that
they
this year.
conform to property
Right,
lines
right.
and that
Yeah,
kind
we
of
can't do
thing.
that this year.
But it's a very short list, and I can email it to you guys if you want to, you know,
Yeah,
consider
the
that.
visual aids, I have a hard time hearing the setback thing.
Yeah,
I
and
need
you,
to I
like,
need to see.
buildings don't really look very good over here.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was basically, the one other task that had been suggested would be a joint meeting with the zoning board. Just to see, you know, how they feel about some of these things, and if there's any amendments on that side that they would like to see.
Okay.
So, and this is predicated again on finding out just when we have to have this stuff delivered, because it changes from year to year as far as the exact dates when the windows open and close.
Are you able to backlog, get the timeline so we know when we need to get?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
That's,
so if we can have that,
I'll
that
have that for you
information.
probably, I'll put it out by email when I get it.
Okay, and then if everyone could review their notes on the zoning ordinance, and maybe just, this might be a good time just to dig into the zoning ordinance, because I think on the slate for this year would be some of those little corrections. I don't think we're gonna redraw the lines
Right.
this year. I think,
Yeah, if we could tighten up what's already there, that would be great.
yeah. So a wish list, and then we'll need some help crafting, figuring out language, but we need the timeline, because we're getting, imagine we'll need to put it to public hearing by January,
Yeah.
so.
It's all backed away from, the way they derive the calendar. It starts with town meeting and you work backwards.
Yep.
Rebecca, have we thought of a good way to work our way through the master plan? Have we come up with a, you know, like a plan for going through the plan?
No, we need to do that,
I was gonna, actually, I thought about that today, and was gonna suggest we look at chapter 3, and those bullets of the implementation actions,
Yep.
and identify those again that are specific perhaps leads for planning board, divide that, and start implementation.
So my suggestion is we get on track with this as soon as we can. I think we got to focus on some of our zoning amendments. But I'm thinking, so town meeting's in March, our first meeting, after that, we vote for officers, and it seems like that's the time to come up with our annual strategic plan. Or, so we take a work session to sort of build a timeline for the coming year. Maybe we do it on January 1 because that will catch us up to the next zoning ordinance. So think about either first work session in January. I guess that's gonna be like January 3rd or something like that. We brainstorm and come up with a plan for each of our work sessions. So we have a work plan for the year, which will just catch us up to, that's actually better, I think, than waiting for town meeting. So we can start working on stuff, and that'll put us in a good place, because if we're working December on our zoning ordinance, then our work session in January will be to do the yearly work plan. And then we have a plan for the rest of the year to sort of figure out how we only have 12 meetings to work these things out. So, which always seems like so many meetings, but 12's not that many.
No.
Always call a special.
Yeah.
You
Were
could
a lot
always
of
call
them
a
skipped
special.
in the past?
We skipped a lot when I
Work
first,
session meetings?
we didn't really, we skipped them if we didn't need them,
Okay.
yeah. But we haven't since I've been here.
Yeah, and certainly if you guys ever feel you need a break,
Mm-hmm.
you can, voluntarily do it if
Yep.
there's no we only meet in work session if you want to, let me
Right.
put it that way.
We seem to have good discussions at all of them, and they seem to last at least an hour every time, even if we have nothing on the agenda, so, so that's my idea is, as far as just how we're gonna plan out the year. And of course, we have to be flexible, but this is something I do for my own job, is I come up with, my timeline for the year, and so that gives us, yeah, time to think about it. But I feel, if we need a break from a work session, that's fine, but I just feel like there's so many
So
things to
actually,
do.
this meeting should have taken place in January of last year, if the master plan wasn't on the table. I like that.
All right. So review the zoning ordinance and rack your brains, and if you have any notes for things that we said we were going to change that were so easy to change in the zoning ordinance.
I have a zoning board meeting next week.
No, you don't. The 13th,
13th,
week after next.
week after. Said next week.
I guess if the zoning board has a wish list for us, then.
I'll be happy to deliver.
And, I mean, they could certainly come to our work session in December. I just feel like we're not quite ready for a massive joint session. I don't know. What does everyone think?
Yeah, they're pretty much set up to be that way.
Yep.
They can't just have a meeting like this. It has to be, full-on public hearing.
Right. Yeah, I don't really have the ability to coordinate more than what I'm doing right now. So. Anything else?
I think Bonnie had something.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we, how do you say it? Adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.